They slammed me face first against my own truck while burger smoke rolled across the driveway and my 16-year-old daughter screamed my name from the porch, and the whole neighborhood just watched. Curtains twitched, phones came out, not one person moved an inch to help because around here people had learned a long time ago that crossing the homeowners association came with consequences. One of the officers twisted my arm harder and barked, "You should have paid the fines, Mr. Mercer." The crazy part, those weren't real cops. And the woman who sent them had no idea she was putting fake handcuffs on the actual police chief of Broward County. My name's Nolan Mercer, and this whole mess started because I made the mistake of buying a house in a neighborhood that looked too perfect to be real. Honestly, maybe that should have been my first warning. 6 months earlier, I'd moved into Ashmore Heights after my wife Evelyn died from pancreatic cancer. 22 years married, and in the end all that was left of her fit inside a cedar box on my bedroom shelf and a stack of handwritten notes she'd hidden around the house for me and our daughter Lucy to find after she was gone. Evelyn used to circle homes in magazines during chemo appointments, talking about retirement like she could somehow bargain with fate if she planned hard enough. "One day we'll get somewhere quiet," she'd say, smiling through the pane, "somewhere with trees and neighbors who wave from their porches." So after the funeral, after the casseroles stopped coming and everybody slowly returned to their normal lives while mine stayed shattered, I bought the house she wanted. Big front porch, white trim, maple trees lining the street, looked like something out of one of those harmless little Hallmark movies where everybody drinks cider and decorates pumpkins together. Lucy only stayed with me on weekends because of school, but we had our thing. Every Saturday night we worked on Evelyn's old 1968 Camaro in the garage. Grease under our fingernails, classic rock humming through a dusty speaker, the smell of oil and metal filling the air while we tried to rebuild something broken because neither of us knew how to rebuild ourselves yet. For a while, that garage was the only place grief loosened its grip on my chest. Then the HOA introduced itself. Day 3, 3 damn days after moving in. I opened my front door and found 4 violation notices rubber banded together like a bundle of parking tickets from hell. Grass too tall. Trash bin visible from the curb. Mailbox painted matte black instead of approved satin black. Wind chimes creating unauthorized ambient noise. I remember standing there barefoot in my robe just blinking at the papers thinking somebody had to be joking. They weren't joking. That afternoon I met Vanessa Holloway, president of the Ashmore Heights Homeowners Association. 50-something, blonde hair sprayed stiff enough to survive a tornado. Diamond bracelet sparkling every time she pointed at somebody like she was knighting peasants. She drove a white Range Rover through the neighborhood at 5 miles an hour with 2 women trailing behind her carrying clipboards like assistants to a suburban dictator. "Mr. Mercer," she said, smiling without warmth, "Ashmore Heights has standards. We protect property values here." I told her I understood. I told her I respected community rules. Hell, I'd spent 27 years in law enforcement, rules practically paid my mortgage. But then she glanced into my garage and saw the Camaro. Vehicle restoration is prohibited unless conducted in an enclosed commercial facility. I laughed because I genuinely thought she was kidding. She didn't laugh back. "You'll need to remove that eyesore immediately." Something in me shifted right there. Not rage yet, more like disbelief mixed with exhaustion. I looked at this woman standing in the driveway of the house my dead wife picked out, telling me the car Evelyn loved was somehow offensive to neighborhood aesthetics, and all I could think was, lady, you have absolutely no idea how close I am to losing my patience. Lucy noticed it too that weekend while handing me a wrench under the garage lights. Dad, she said softly, why does that woman hate everybody? I remember tightening a bolt and staring at the engine a second before answering. Because some people get a little power and confuse it with importance. Turns out Vanessa Holloway didn't just enjoy power, she fed on it. And before long, she stopped treating the neighborhood like a community, and started treating it like her kingdom. The violations started showing up every morning after that like clockwork, folded neatly under my doormat before sunrise, each one more ridiculous than the last. My pickup truck was apparently parked at an aggressive angle. Lucy's music coming from the garage during daylight hours violated community tranquility guidelines. One notice claimed the smell of charcoal from my grill was creating an unpleasant outdoor experience for neighboring residents. I wish I was exaggerating. The fines kept stacking too, $75 here, $200 there, late penalties multiplying faster than weeds. And the thing about grief is, it drains your energy for conflict. Most days I barely had enough strength to drag myself through work, come home, microwave dinner, and pretend I wasn't falling apart in front of my kid. Vanessa sensed that weakness immediately. Predators always do. One Tuesday evening I came home after a 12-hour shift dealing with a real domestic violence call, bruised woman, terrified little boy, the kind of thing that sticks to your skin no matter how many years you wear the badge, and sitting on my garage door was a bright orange sticker that read Final Notice of Non-Compliance. Right across Evelyn's Camaro. I just stood there in the driveway staring at it while the engine ticked beneath the hood of my truck. Then I heard a voice behind me. She's trying to push you out. I turned and saw Eleanor Whitaker from across the street holding a watering can against her chest. Eleanor had to be nearly 70, silver curls, oversized glasses, sweet little cardigan even in warm weather, looked like somebody's favorite elementary school teacher. Turned out she actually had been one for 30 years. Vanessa did the same thing to the Hoppers, she whispered, eyes flicking nervously toward the Holloway house at the end of the cul-de-sac. And the Benavides family before them. Eventually people either leave, or lose the house. That got my attention. Lose the house how? Eleanor hesitated like she already regretted speaking. Foreclosure threats, legal fees, liens, she buries people until they can't breathe anymore. That night I couldn't sleep. Rain tapped against the windows while I sat at the kitchen table going through every HOA document I could find online, and the deeper I dug the stranger it got. Excessive processing fees. Missing financial disclosures. Violation codes that didn't match state regulations. Vanessa wasn't just running a strict HOA, she was running a racket. The next weekend Lucy climbed onto a stool beside me in the garage while I tore apart the Camaro carburetor. You're doing the detective thing again, she said. I know that look. I smirked a little. What look? The one where your eyebrows do that angry dad thing and you stop blinking for long periods of time. Kid wasn't wrong. I told her maybe Miss Holloway wasn't exactly playing by the rules. Lucy wiped grease across her cheek and muttered, good. Somebody should scare her for once. Here's the thing I haven't mentioned yet, nobody in Ashmore Heights knew who I was. I transferred quietly into Bryan County after Evelyn died, stepped into the chief position without publicity because honestly I didn't have the emotional bandwidth for handshakes and newspaper photos. Vanessa saw me as just another broken middle-aged widower she could bully into submission. So I let her keep believing it. Sometimes people reveal everything when they think you're powerless. Over the next few weeks I started documenting everything. Photos. Dates. Copies of notices. I even timed one of Vanessa's so-called compliance officers sitting outside my house in a golf cart taking pictures through my garage windows for 43 minutes straight. 43 minutes. That crossed a line. So I called my oldest friend, Marcus Reed, a private investigator who used to work organized financial crimes before retiring early after a stroke nearly killed him. Marcus showed up 2 nights later carrying surveillance equipment in the back of his dusty SUV and chewing sunflower seeds like always. An HOA, he laughed while setting up cameras in my garage. Nolan, after all the cartel cases we worked. This is what finally breaks you. Just look into it. By the end of the week he stopped laughing. "This woman's dirty," he said, tossing a folder onto my kitchen counter. "Real dirty." Turns out Vanessa Holloway had connections to 3 other HOA boards across the state, all neighborhoods with suspicious foreclosure patterns and missing reserve funds. Tens of thousands of dollars had disappeared through fake landscaping contracts and shell maintenance companies. One contractor address literally led to an abandoned laundromat. Meanwhile Vanessa kept escalating. One morning workers arrived unannounced and started spray painting orange markings along my driveway claiming the HOA would soon begin corrective landscaping measures. Another day somebody smashed Eleanor Whitaker's bird bath and she got fined for yard debris. A young couple down the street received a warning because their autistic son drew chalk dinosaurs on the sidewalk. Dinosaurs. I started realizing something ugly about Ashmore Heights. People here weren't passive because they agreed with Vanessa. They were scared. Every conversation happened in whispers. Everybody glanced over their shoulders before speaking. The HOA meetings felt less like neighborhood gatherings and more like hostage negotiations. Then came the meeting that changed everything. Vanessa held it in the clubhouse on a Thursday night. About 50 residents showed up, sitting stiff in folding chairs while Vanessa stood at the front wearing a white pantsuit like some suburban televangelist. Due to increasing community deterioration, she announced dramatically, Ashmore Heights will begin enhanced enforcement protocols. People groaned quietly. Vanessa ignored them. Then she looked directly at me. Certain residents have demonstrated open hostility toward community standards. There it was. Public targeting. I stayed calm. Mind clarifying what law gives your HOA authority to issue penalties on public streets? The room went dead silent. Vanessa smiled slowly. Excuse me? Your patrol carts are documenting residents off HOA property. That's illegal. She took a step closer. You seem unusually interested in legal technicalities, Mr. Mercer. Occupational habit. Her eyes narrowed right there. Maybe some instinct finally whispered that I wasn't who she thought I was. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. Perhaps, she said coldly, if Ashmore Heights no longer meets your expectations, you should consider living somewhere more suited to your personality. I almost laughed because the threat was so transparent. Leave willingly, or we'll make your life unbearable until you do. On the drive home, Lucy stared out the passenger window quietly before finally saying, Mom would have hated her. That one hurt. Evelyn hated bullies more than anybody I'd ever known. She used to cry over news stories about elderly people losing homes to scams. Used to say a person's house was sacred because it held every version of their family inside the walls. And suddenly I realized why Vanessa Holloway bothered me so deeply. It wasn't the fines or the harassment. It was the way she treated people's homes like leverage instead of memories. Like assets instead of lives. That night Marcus called around midnight. His voice sounded tight. Nolan, you need to hear this. He'd uncovered internal emails linking Vanessa to fraudulent foreclosure filings tied to elderly homeowners. Signatures forged. Fees inflated. Entire houses quietly seized and resold through LLCs connected back to her brother in Nevada. My stomach turned cold. This wasn't petty HOA corruption anymore. This was organized theft dressed up in suburban landscaping rules. Then Marcus said the sentence that changed the entire game. And buddy, I think she just hired fake security officers. I sat up straighter. What? Uniforms. Fake badges. Ex-corrections washouts working private jobs. She's building her own little police force. Outside my kitchen window I could hear the faint electric hum of one of those patrol golf carts drifting through the neighborhood in the dark, slow, deliberate, predatory. And for the first time since Evelyn died, I felt something stronger than grief. I felt angry. Real anger. The kind that sharpens your breathing and steadies your hands. Vanessa Holloway thought she was terrorizing another exhausted widower who'd eventually cave under pressure. What she didn't realize was, she had just accidentally declared war on a man who knew exactly how to dismantle criminal organizations piece by piece. And I was finally done playing nice. The first thing I did was stop thinking like a grieving husband, and start thinking like a cop again. Funny how survival instincts work. For months I'd been drifting through life half numb, barely sleeping, eating whatever came out of a microwave, pretending I was okay because Lucy needed at least one stable parent left in her world. But the second Marcus told me Vanessa Holloway was running fake enforcement crews through my neighborhood, something inside me locked back into place. The next morning I shaved for the first time in almost a week, put on an actual pressed shirt, and drove straight to the county records office before sunrise. By noon I had enough paperwork spread across my desk to make a federal prosecutor smile. Shell companies. Fraudulent liens. Duplicate invoices billed to multiple HOA accounts. Vanessa wasn't just stealing from residents, she'd built an entire business model around fear. And the craziest part? She probably would have kept getting away with it if she hadn't pushed so hard, so fast. Narcissists always overplay the hand eventually. That weekend Lucy came over carrying milkshakes and immediately stopped in the garage doorway staring at the evidence boards Marcus and I had covered in photos and documents. Okay, she said slowly. Either you joined the FBI overnight or somebody's about to have a very bad week. I laughed harder than I had in months. Something like that. She walked over to Evelyn's Camaro and ran her fingers across the hood. Mom used to say bad people panic when good people stop being afraid. God, hearing that almost knocked the air out of me. Because she sounded exactly like Evelyn when she said it. Same calm certainty. Same quiet fire underneath it. Monday morning Ashmore Heights woke up to chaos. 3 residents found foreclosure notices taped to their doors overnight. Eleanor Whitaker was one of them. I'll never forget seeing that old woman standing barefoot in her driveway holding the paper with trembling hands while her little dog barked beside her. They said I owe nearly $18,000, she whispered. Nolan. I don't even have $1,800. That was the moment the neighborhood finally cracked. People started talking openly. Comparing notices. Sharing stories. A contractor admitted Vanessa paid him cash to intentionally damage certain properties before inspections. One former HOA board member confessed he'd resigned after Vanessa pressured him to falsify maintenance votes. Suddenly the whole illusion started collapsing. Fear only works while people think they're alone. Vanessa sensed it too. That's when she got desperate. 2 nights later somebody cut the power line to my garage. Security cameras caught masked men snooping around the property before speeding off in an unmarked SUV. Then came the anonymous complaints filed against me with county oversight claiming I was abusing police resources to intimidate homeowners. Honestly, that part almost impressed me. Vanessa wasn't stupid. Evil, absolutely, but not stupid. She understood that if she could discredit me publicly before I exposed her, people might hesitate long enough for her to escape. Problem was, she waited too long. Because by then the FBI had already started quietly circling her operation. Turns out financial fraud tied to interstate foreclosure scams gets federal attention real quick. Especially when fake law enforcement impersonation enters the picture. Marcus arranged a meeting with Special Agent Dana Keller at a diner off Highway 8. Dana looked like somebody's exhausted aunt until she started discussing wire fraud statutes from memory like poetry. After 20 minutes reviewing our evidence, she leaned back in the booth and sighed. Mr. Mercer, your HOA president accidentally billed herself a racketeering case. Best sentence I'd heard all year. The takedown plan came together fast after that. Federal surveillance. Hidden cameras. Audio recording approvals. Vanessa, meanwhile, kept spiraling. Her patrol crews became more aggressive, driving through the neighborhood at night shining flashlights into windows. One resident caught them photographing children in backyards, for compliance documentation. Another family found their garden ripped apart before receiving landscaping citations the next morning. Then Vanessa crossed the line that finally destroyed her. She decided to make an example out of me publicly. Saturday afternoon. Sunny weather. Lucy and I grilling burgers out back while old Springsteen songs played from the garage speaker. Honestly, for a few minutes life almost felt normal again. Then 2 black SUVs rolled into my driveway. Fake officers stepped out wearing tactical vests and counterfeit badges shiny enough to fool civilians. One of them shouted, "Nolan Mercer, you are under arrest for intimidation, property violations, and interference with community enforcement operations." Lucy froze beside me holding a paper plate. "Dad," I could hear the fear cracking in her voice. That part nearly broke me. But I kept my expression calm and slowly raised my hands. Neighbors started gathering outside. Curtains opening. Phones recording. Vanessa's white Range Rover appeared at the curb a few seconds later like she was arriving for the season finale of her favorite show. She actually smiled when the fake officers shoved me against my truck. Smiled. "This is what happens," she announced loudly, "when someone thinks they're above the rules." Then one of the fake cops clicked plastic cuffs around my wrists, and I gave the signal. Everything exploded at once. Unmarked vehicles flooded the street. Real FBI agents poured out from every direction screaming commands. Federal agents. Hands where we can see them. The fake officers panicked instantly. One tried to run. Didn't make it 6 feet. Vanessa's face lost all color so fast it honestly looked painful. Agent Dana Keller walked right past me and straight toward her holding a stack of warrants. "Vanessa Holloway, you are under arrest for conspiracy, wire fraud, foreclosure fraud, impersonation of law enforcement officers, witness intimidation, and racketeering activity." The neighborhood went dead silent. Vanessa looked at me confused, desperate, still somehow believing she could talk her way out of it. Then I reached into my pocket, pulled out my real badge, and watched her entire world collapse. "Chief Nolan Mercer," I said quietly. "Broward County Police Department." I swear to God, the woman actually staggered backward. Around us neighbors started cheering. Eleanor Whitaker cried openly on her porch while agents escorted Vanessa toward a federal vehicle in handcuffs. Lucy threw her arms around me so hard I almost lost balance. "You planned all this," she whispered. I looked out across the neighborhood, all those exhausted people standing in driveways finally realizing the nightmare was over. "No," I said softly. "She planned it herself. We just let her finish." Vanessa Holloway took a plea deal 8 months later. 7 years federal prison. Restitution payments. Asset seizures. 3 other HOA investigations opened across the state because of evidence tied back to her network. Ashmore Heights dissolved the old board completely. Eleanor became interim community president, which honestly felt perfect. And me? I finally started healing. Really healing. Lucy and I finished restoring Evelyn's Camaro that spring. Candy apple red, exactly how her mom wanted it. Sometimes at sunset we still sit in the garage with the door open, listening to music drift across the neighborhood while kids ride bikes down the street without anybody measuring grass height or checking mailbox colors. Funny thing is, Vanessa thought power came from making people afraid. Turns out real power comes from the moment people stop being afraid of you. So now I'm curious. What would you have done in my position? Would you have fought back, or walked away before it got dangerous? And be honest, because neighborhoods like Ashmore Heights exist all over America, hiding behind pretty signs and perfectly trimmed lawns. Drop your thoughts in the comments, because after everything that happened here, I genuinely want to know, when does protecting a community turn into controlling it?